dressing. Dressing.
Oh, French dressing.
Exactly.
Oh, that's good.
I'm AJ Jacobs, and my current obsession is puzzles. And that has given birth to my new podcast, The Puzzler.
Something about Mary Poppins?
Exactly.
This is fun.
You can get your daily puzzle nuggets delivered straight to your ears. Listen to The Puzzler every day on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Paul Muldoon, a poet who, over the past several years, has had the good fortune to record hours of conversations with one of the world's greatest songwriters, Sir Paul McCartney. The result is our new podcast, McCartney, A Life in Lyrics. Listen to McCartney, A Life in Lyrics on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Evidence-wise, we had virtually no evidence.
In 1995, Detective Tony Richardson was trying to figure out who killed a fellow officer. The case comes down to who is believed and who is ignored.
Oh my goodness, we did convict an innocent man.
I'm Beth Shelburne from Lava for Good Podcasts. This is Ear Witness. Listen to Ear Witness on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning. I'd be remiss if I didn't start, ladies and gentlemen, by thanking Montgomery County Police Department. They have worked tirelessly. There are so many people trying to help, and we just appreciate that tremendously. I don't usually cry, so I apologize.
Randy Hoggle is standing in front of a lectern with a bunch of microphones capturing every word. On either side, he's flanked by police officers. His words and his presence seem desperate.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could, I really am saying this for my daughter, and this is a plea to my daughter to come home and have help.
Randy looks like he hasn't slept. His crisp blue and white shirt is a contrast to his drawn face and the bags under his eyes.
Many people deal with mental illness. Many families deal with mental illness. It's always a judgment about medication and the delicate balance of medication being taken.
Randy's daughter, Catherine Hoggle, has been missing, on the run, for 3 days now. And it's been 4 days since anyone besides Catherine has seen her two youngest children, Sarah and Jacob.
We know she's probably not been on medication for 2 weeks, and thus we know, Catherine, this is not you, and this is not who you're about and what you do.
For years, Catherine's mental health had been deteriorating, this last year in particular. Her family, her dad Randy, her mom Lindsay, and her partner Troy, had run themselves ragged trying to get Catherine the help she needed. Not only did they get her committed to a mental health facility for a time, when she was at home, Catherine had to follow strict rules set out by her family. Catherine wasn't allowed to be alone with the kids. She couldn't drive. And she had to continue attending a day program at a psychiatric hospital. It was all in an attempt to keep both the kids and Catherine safe. But now, as days went by and the kids and Catherine remained missing, they were all coming to the horrible realization that Catherine was more dangerous than they had ever imagined. And maybe, just maybe, they hadn't done enough to help her.
Everyone here is committed to, if you just come and get help, we'll all help you. And for that, I just want to say, please come home. We miss you, and we miss the kids.
I'm Beth Karras, and this is Unrestorable, an original podcast from Anonymous Content and iHeartRadio. This press conference gave the family one small win. The very next evening, Catherine was spotted, and police were notified.
When she was picked up, she was over here with her purse full of flyers, and she was pulling them down when she was seen by the people who called the police to say they saw her.
Catherine was finally in custody, and police began to interrogate her. Troy, father of the missing children, breathed a sigh of relief.
The next morning, I get a call And they're asking myself and Randy to come in and saying, look, she won't tell us where the kids are. Maybe she'll tell you guys. Come ask her.
This was the moment Troy had put all his hope into.
When I first walk into the room, she looks at me and she goes, oh, what are you doing here? You know, kind of like it's a Saturday and I showed up at a bowling alley and she had like a tournament or something. I said, well, I'm here so you can tell me where the kids are so I can go pick up our children. And she was like, they're safe. I said, where are they? She said, they're fine. I gave them to someone. They're being watched. They're fine. I said, Catherine, where are my kids?
It became clear pretty quickly that Catherine's arrest would not be the end of Troy's nightmare. In many ways, it marked a new beginning. At this point, Catherine had only been charged with child neglect and detaining a child, misdemeanors. Murder charges would not come for another 3 years. But the capture and arrest of Catherine would kick off a legal and personal odyssey that would raise questions about mental illness and how it intersects with policing and the court system. Her family would also face their own reckoning. They would have to come to terms with the fact that their efforts to find Catherine help hadn't been nearly enough, and that lack of help meant that the worst thing they could imagine happening had happened.
It was a clear day in September. Went in, she had been interviewed by the police, I believe for several hours. They had brought in some people to talk with her, other people other than the police, to talk with her in an attempt to gain information.
David Felsen is Catherine's attorney.
I then went in to see her. She was in a very small room. She was in a plastic smock type of clothing because the police had taken her clothing. It was obvious to me, without disclosing anything confidential, that there were profound mental health issues for Catherine, clearly and profoundly not well.
What did you observe about her physically or what's coming out of her mouth that made you conclude she was profoundly mentally ill?
Well, I'm not a doctor. It would be wrong for me to say that I made that conclusion. I had the suspicion, it was profoundly obvious, that when you would talk to her, there were significant deficits and significant disconnects between the circumstances that she found herself in and the way she would react to people. But my job was to represent her. There were a variety of issues that I was concerned with. The first was her competency, because without her competency, she can't make rational and reasonable decisions about what she should do in her circumstance.
Something about Mary Poppins?
Something about Mary Poppins. Exactly.
Oh, man, this is fun.
I'm AJ Jacobs, and I am an author and a journalist, and I tend to get obsessed with stuff. And my current obsession is puzzles. And that has given birth to my new podcast, The Puzzler. Dressing.
Oh, French dressing.
Exactly.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
We are living in the golden age of puzzles, and now you can get your daily puzzle nuggets delivered straight to your ears for 10 minutes or less every day on The Puzzler, short and sweet.
I thought to myself, I bet I know what this is, and now I definitely know what this is.
This is so weird. This is fun. Let's try this one.
Listen to The Puzzler every day on the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
That's awful, and I should have seen it coming.
I'm Paul Muldoon, a poet who over the past several years had the good fortune to spend time with one of the world's greatest songwriters, Sir Paul McCartney. We talked through more than 150 tracks from McCartney's songbook, and while we did, we recorded our conversations.
Yesterday. I mean, the fact that I dreamed the song yesterday leads me to believe that it's not just quite as cut and dried as we think it is.
And now you can listen to our conversations in our new podcast, McCartney, A Life in Lyrics.
It was like going back to an old Snapshot album, looking back on work I hadn't thought much about for quite a few years.
Listen to McCartney, A Life in Lyrics on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Evidence-wise, we had virtually no evidence. We had the word of a 15-year-old who told lies, a lot of lies.
I've lied.
In 1995, Detective Tony Richardson was trying to figure out who killed a fellow officer, Deputy Bill Hardy. Without solid evidence, the case comes down to who is believed and who is ignored.
We did convict an innocent man, and he's been on death row all these years, and I didn't know it.
I'm Beth Shelburne from Lava for Good Podcasts. This is Ear Witness. Listen to Ear Witness on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And to hear episodes with no ads, subscribe to Lava for Good Plus on Apple Podcasts.
While Catherine's lawyer might have been concerned about her level of competency, the police had other concerns.
We had authorities providing a fair amount of pressure on us concerning the children.
Obviously, there are some mental health concerns. Our concern is the investigation and bringing those two children home.
Montgomery County Police Assistant Chief Darren Frank was a captain in 2014. He spoke to the media when the kids first went missing.
We are running down every single lead. We are collecting data from phones. We're collecting data from sightings. We're collecting data from just interviews with people that knew Catherine, and we're chasing down every single possibility to figure out where she is. There's at least 50 officers involved with that effort.
Missing people are a concern for the police, but missing children, they are everyone's nightmare. And sometimes, in their desperate effort to find missing kids, police will push the envelope on what is permissible.
We have two children out there that their client claims to be alive, and we're trying to locate them. And the Montgomery County Police will do everything within the bounds of the law to try and find out where those children are.
A few weeks after Catherine's arrest, detectives went to collect a DNA sample from her. Desperate for answers, the investigators ended up speaking to Catherine for a couple of hours, without her attorney knowing about it. This is a sticky area where investigators have to balance a defendant's rights with the urgency of the situation.
He has to do his job. We run into this all the time with all kinds of cases that there are areas that defense attorneys don't like us acting.
Once her lawyer learned about this interaction between his client and the police, he filed a motion asking the judge to dismiss the charges. In court, there was also discussion about whether Catherine had communicated an offer to take the police to the children, something Catherine has denied. In the end, the judge did not dismiss the charges, but told the police that they couldn't speak to Catherine without her lawyer present. The police were also prevented from taking Catherine up on her alleged offer to lead them to the children.
I spoke with her, my investigator spoke with her, and she very clearly, very lucid, said, yes, I want to take you to an address, and was trying to dictate terms to us on when she wanted to go, and she wanted to go immediately. But now, I'm disappointed that she wasn't afforded the opportunity that day to go, but I certainly understand the judge's decision. As a law enforcement officer, I understand it. I respect it. As a father, if I wasn't a law enforcement officer, I'd be very upset, and I think Troy's expressed that. And I think if you go to most people, when it's their children in that situation, they would feel the same frustration that a system is standing in the way of finding out what happened to children.
Troy was no doubt frustrated with the system.
Once she got locked up, I was calling hoping that she would say something. I was calling daily at first. And she would talk to me and she was like, no, the kids are safe. I would try to talk to her maybe about like just some other things, you know, what's going there, whatever. And then come back to the kids to see if she would answer differently.
At the beginning of this whole saga, Troy believed he might actually find his kids alive, that a small part of what Catherine had told him was true, that she had dropped them off at a friend's house. This isn't the first time I've heard about a mother who's accused of hurting her kids, but tells the police that they are safe with friends. Lori Vallow Daybell did that, and so did Casey Anthony.
So when it first happened, I'm thinking, okay, within a day, we're going to have them back. Then after, Tuesday goes by, we do all the questioning stuff on Wednesday goes by, and it's kind of like, all right, we're passing out flyers, nobody's seen nothing. All right, so within a week or two, they're going to be back home. Then from like 2 weeks out, I'm going, okay, within the next 3 weeks or so, they got to be back here. So after a month passes, I go, okay, well, within like the next month or so, whoever has them, they don't want to feed somebody else's kids. Like someone's going to come out and be like, yo, is someone going to pick up these kids I was babysitting, or something like that. And I'm thinking, okay, now they're on TV and stuff. So whoever has them who thinks maybe their mom left them and abandoned them, they're going to see them on TV and go, oh my God, I'm not actually supposed to have these kids and bring them home.
But we know that never happened. The children have now been missing for 9 years.
My perspective started to shift. I felt like as their father, though, my job was to keep hope out there and continue to look even though I didn't believe it anymore. And finally, I remember when the first time I ever said it publicly, I felt like I was betraying Sarah and Jacob. I got home and I broke down and cried, and I was just like, I betrayed my kids today.
Something about Mary Poppins?
Something about Mary Poppins. Exactly.
Oh, man, this is fun.
I'm AJ Jacobs, and I am an author and a journalist, and I tend to get obsessed with stuff. And my current obsession is puzzles. And that has given birth to my new podcast, The Puzzler. Dressing.
Oh, French dressing.
Exactly.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
We are living in the golden age of puzzles, and now you can get your daily puzzle nuggets delivered straight to your ears for 10 minutes or less every day on The Puzzler, short and sweet.
I thought to myself, I bet I know what this is, and now I definitely know what this is.
This is so weird. This is fun. Let's try this one.
Listen to The Puzzler every day on the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
That's awful, and I should have seen it coming.
I'm Paul Muldoon, a poet who over the past several years had the good fortune to spend time with one of the world's greatest songwriters, Sir Paul McCartney. We talked through more than 150 tracks from McCartney's songbook, and while we did, we recorded our conversations.
Yesterday. I mean, the fact that I dreamed the song yesterday leads me to believe that it's not just quite as cut and dried as we think it is.
And now you can listen to our conversations in our new podcast, McCartney, A Life in Lyrics.
It was like going back to an old snapshot album, looking back on work I hadn't thought much about for quite a few years.
Listen to McCartney, A Life in Lyrics on the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Evidence-wise, we had virtually no evidence. We had the word of a 15-year-old who told lies, a lot of lies.
I've lied, I've lied, I've lied.
In 1995, Detective Tony Richardson was trying to figure out who killed a fellow officer, Deputy Bill Hardy. Without solid evidence, the case comes down to who is believed and who is ignored.
We did convict an innocent man, and he's been on death row all these years, and I didn't know it.
I'm Beth Shelburne from Lava for Good Podcasts. This is Ear Witness. Listen to Ear Witness on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And to hear episodes with no ads, subscribe to Lava for Good Plus on Apple Podcasts.
Three years after she was arrested, Catherine was charged with the murder of her children, even though their bodies have never been found. But since being found incompetent to stand trial, she has never had to face those charges in court. And because of the limitations in the law in the state where she lives, she might never have to.
So people want to make sure that justice, the criminal side of things, is served, but also oftentimes they want to make sure that the human beings who are involved in that process are also treated like human beings. Sometimes human beings, do really terrible things, but they're still human beings.
Tess Neal is a forensic psychologist and associate professor at Iowa State University, and she studies the delicate intersection between the U.S. justice system and the rights of the mentally ill.
Let's say the court has decided that somebody is incompetent to stand trial. Now, what that means is that based on the Sixth Amendment to our Constitution, it guarantees that people who are accused of committing a crime, they have the right to confront the witnesses against them. They have the right to aid in their own defense. They have the right to help their attorney, defend them against those charges. And so the concept here is that if somebody is incompetent to stand trial, then they are not in their right mind to be able to help defend themselves against those charges. And so the system, our legal system, has said that is unfair. So we do have this strong public interest, this desire to move this case forward, but now we have a person who cannot participate in the process as it has been designed. So we need to stop that process and wait until the person is of their right mind and can participate in their own defense.
Competency is a legal determination by a judge who considers what treating doctors and experts have to say. But in another state, using the same evidence, Catherine may well have been found competent to stand trial. Even a different judge in Maryland may have made a different determination. In Maryland, the longest an incompetent person can be held for any felony, including murder, is 5 years. And after the 5 years are up, and that person cannot be made to understand or to help in their defense, those charges will be dismissed. This is no doubt very frustrating for Troy. He's concerned no one will be held responsible for the deaths of his children. But he's also worried about something else, that Catherine might in fact be manipulating the system. He knows that she is mentally ill, but Troy wonders if she's more capable than she's letting on. And with hindsight, he's even now wondering when that manipulation began.
Nobody thinks about someone would do this, especially in a way like this where it would have had to have been planned out, where it's not this psychotic break.
Since the kids have been gone, Troy has discovered more about the evening leading up to their disappearance. While Troy was at work, Catherine was with her father, Randy, and the children. And remember, Catherine was not allowed to be alone with the kids, nor was she allowed to drive. But Troy has discovered that afternoon, Randy gave his daughter his car keys and let her leave.
She left with Jacob to go get pizza right up the street and came back 3.5 hours without him.
Troy learned that when Catherine came back without Jacob, she told her father that she had dropped the 2-year-old off at a friend's for a sleepover. A 2-year-old at a sleepover? Think about that.
I don't know any of this at the time. I'm at work.
It occurred to Troy now that Catherine had been capable enough that day to come up with a lie about what she had done with their son. When Troy gets home later that night, after stopping at a grocery store, he finds Catherine sitting outside their townhouse on the front steps.
I'm like, what are you doing down here? She's like, oh, I was going to help you carry the groceries up. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Troy was tired. It had been a long day. He just wanted to kiss his kids and fall asleep. But Catherine didn't want to go in just yet. She wanted to go across the street to grab a soda.
So I said, yeah, it's fine. So we just went across the street real quick, got it, came back, carried the groceries up, put them away, and by then it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm tired. Literally every other night of my life, whenever I got home, my kids were in bed, I would walk in, pray by their bed, kiss them goodnight, and go lay down. That night I was tired, and I was like, you know what? If they wake up, I'm up. And I just selfishly went to bed.
In the rearview mirror, Catherine's actions feel different, manipulative, like part of a plan.
Do you feel like Catherine took the kids to hurt you? Do you feel like that was her motive?
I feel like that was probably one. Like, I believe that part of this is a revenge thing, and I think she felt like I had basically made her life almost a confinement or something because she had the day program. She couldn't be alone with the kids, you know. So I think it was a way of taking control. And I think that it was probably anger towards me because I'm the one who had her committed because, well, I mean, her parents didn't have the guts to do it. I think part of it is just her not wanting the responsibility of being a mother at that point.
We know what happens next. Later that afternoon, Catherine takes Troy on a wild goose chase. The kids are never found, and Catherine takes off. 5 days later, she's nabbed by the police, and since then has been in custody. But Catherine's criminal case was halted soon after her arrest, when her attorney asked for Catherine to be evaluated for competency. But Troy is skeptical about Catherine's incompetency, especially as time wore on, and Catherine continued to hinder the search for the kids.
Why wouldn't you just bring them home? I said, bring them home, and they'll drop the charges, you're out. And she said, they still want to put me in jail. I said, well, they can't. So she says, well, no, they still have all the misdemeanor charges. And she goes, well, they have the parental abduction, which is 60 days time served. She goes, there's the obstruction, that's 90 days, that's time served. She goes, but they still have the 2 misdemeanor neglect charges that carry 5 years each. She says, so that's 10 years that they can put on me.
Troy feels that Catherine's refusal to talk about the children and assist in her own defense is calculated, that it could be a ploy to keep her out of prison. And he's not alone.
The Catherine Hoggle that you saw in that courtroom, was she the same Catherine Hoggle that you interviewed? He said that she...
Early in the investigation, a local Maryland reporter spoke with police captain Darren Frank about Catherine.
In what way was she different?
When we have spoken with her every time, she's very lucid. She knows exactly who's around her. I had 10 minutes of interaction with her when she was originally arrested. She knew exactly who I was when I came to see her at her request. That was one of the first things that I asked to see, how lucid she was. And she remembered me instantly. So, and she also remembers the investigators by name, and she makes requests of certain investigators by name. Completely different person in the courtroom.
It seems to some that Catherine might have a plan, knowing that in Maryland, the court must dismiss felony charges against anyone found incompetent for 5 years. Has this occurred to Catherine? Could she find a way to remain incompetent long enough to see the murder charges dismissed?
When I would ask her end game, it was, I've been advised to remain incompetent.
That's how she said it. I've been advised
to remain incompetent. And then I would say, well, who advised you? Troy, I can't tell you that.
Even Catherine's mother, Lindsay, seems to agree with Troy. This is from an affidavit from 2015 that Lindsay signed. Catherine has explained to me that her plan is to try to remain incompetent long enough to be found not to be a danger to herself or others, and therefore able to be released and either live with me or live in a community home for women she has identified. To do this, to remain incompetent for long enough to get her charges dismissed, Catherine would have to convince her therapists and treating psychiatrists at the state hospital where she lives that she is not restorable, that no medication can make her competent. But that's not an easy task. The vast majority of incompetent defendants are restored within a year or so. To Troy, the law seems unfair. It feels to him that it just allows Catherine to get away with a horrible crime in a few short years, and will leave those who loved Jacob and Sarah without any sense of accountability or justice. But to others, the law operated exactly as it was intended. Next time on Unrestorable.
We come from this very Puritan kind of heritage in our culture, and we're very punitive. We have just an extraordinarily high rate of incarceration in this country, and a kind of political narrative that we're tough on crime and we want to make sure that people don't get away with things. We also have a still pretty stigmatizing view of mental illness.
Unrestorable is executive produced and hosted by me, Beth Karras, and Sarah Trelevin. Our story editor is Kathleen Goldhar. Mixing and sound design by Reza Daya. For anonymous content, Jessica Grimshaw is our executive producer, Jennifer Sears is our executive in charge of production, and Nick Yanez is our legal counsel. For iHeart, executive producer Christina Everett and supervising producer Abu Zafar.
Dressing.
Oh, French dressing.
Exactly.
Oh, that's good.
I'm AJ Jacobs, and my current obsession is puzzles. And that has given birth to my new podcast, The Puzzler.
Something about Mary Poppins?
Exactly.
This is fun.
You can get your daily puzzle nuggets delivered straight to your ears. Listen to The Puzzler every day on the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Paul Muldoon, a poet who, over the past several years, has had the good fortune to record hours of conversations with one of the world's greatest songwriters, Sir Paul McCartney. The result is our new podcast, McCartney, A Life in Lyrics. Listen to McCartney, A Life in Lyrics on the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Evidence-wise, we had virtually no evidence.
In 1995, Detective Tony Richardson was trying to figure out who killed a fellow officer. The case comes down to who is believed and who is ignored.
Oh my goodness, we did convict an innocent man.
I'm Beth Shelburne from Lava for Good Podcasts. This is Ear Witness. Listen to Ear Witness on the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.